When people find out they have repetitive strain injury, sometimes the first thing they do is go online to see how they can prevent the injury from getting worse or help it heal. And one of the most common things that they will find when they go online is how to stretch. But is stretching really such a good idea? Very often it can be done improperly, and that can aggravate the problem. So here to explain the do's and don'ts of stretching is our chief medical expert, Dr. Robert Markison. Click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you'll know when new videos are posted. Welcome back, Dr. Markison. What would you like to tell us about stretching?
Well, it's probably easiest when you're really a baby, when you have cartilage and it hasn't even turned into bones yet. But once you have bones and the ligaments that bind them and so on, you want to be careful about exploiting range of motion. I have this much abduction angle of the thumb. I can go here, I can go here, I can go here, I can go there. I don't need to be there. It's a little uncomfortable. If I'm trying to get a 10th interval on a piano, yeah, of course I can do it, but it's not an all day kind of thing, because you're going to feel it, and you're going to feel it in the vectors of force, the tendons, muscle tendon units that travel over top of moving members. You'll feel it in ligaments that you're overstretching. And so the gift of ligamentous laxity can also be a blight. You can abuse things by stretching them too far, too often. Staying a little limber is fine. You look at your cat stretching, and your cat will stretch to a reasonable degree, then totally relax. And if you watch the falling cat in slow motion and how it rights itself, it's not doing these crazy stretches. It's terribly efficient. Same with birds, the quick little birds, chickadees and others that are suddenly taking flight and landing. And if you look at super slow motion, it's really economy of motion. They're not doing anything extravagant except perhaps mating, but the albatross at sea, hours and days and weeks and months, terrifically efficient use of self, never overdoing it.
You know, there's a phrase that I learned recently called pandiculate. I don't know if you know it, but it's like what people think of as a stretch, but it's more like a yawn. And there's this way that cats will just, it's so juicy, but they're not doing violence to themselves.
I agree. So we're again, narcissistic species looking all day at ourselves, realizing that we're basically a stumbling mosaic of DNA of all the species without the eyes of a hawk or the wings of an eagle and so on. So we have to really study wildlife and species long predating humans to understand how wonderfully efficient they are.
You know, can we get back to this idea of stretching a nerve? Would that be something one would want to do?
No, I mean, they call it nerve glides. If it's nice and easy to gentle, that's fine. We know that tendons have glide paths with excursion, a distance they go. Okay, so I'm traveling a few centimeters at the wrist, the tendons and so on. Nerves also have some excursion. And there again, a little bit of light motion, but never to an extreme, is very adequate, because you realize that as you get older and perhaps have some osteoarthritic spurring, osteophyte formation, then everything is moving over some promontories, some irregular bones and joints. And you don't want to tempt the fates by overstretching, especially in the cervicothoracic region. So beware, be careful. Overstretching is a bad thing, and using bands that might be constricting is frankly very dangerous.
Yes, I think that, you know, the violence with which most people stretch is really very unnerving to me. And just watching you and the way you were using your hands in the nerve glide when you were talking about that was so natural. It was very fluid and watery. And I think if people want to feel loose, they're not going to feel loose by overstretching. It doesn't really help. It just creates more pain. And then you've got more pain.
Right. I mean, and if you look at swimmers, obviously human swimmers, you'll see that if you're doing butterfly, that's pretty rough. Those are big stretches. You have to be taking it up very early in life to be able to do that. Freestyle or side stroke and other things are much more fluid. So when you're in water, subtracting out some gravity and having some circumferential resistance to body movement, that's a nice model for things that flow well, as long as you're not trying to be a speed demon in there.
Thank you, Dr. Markison, for clarifying this for us. I think it's a real service to our community. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.